You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, a podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, and whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. I appreciate you making us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. If you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us in the comment section down below if you prefer sandwiches that are hot or sandwiches that are cold. Now, obviously, some are better one way or the other, but which is your favorite type, hot or cold? Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We got more on that fun later, but a lot of portal-y topics to get into today. I want to talk some about, yes, the portal giveth and taketh away. We do need to talk about that some. I want to spend the second segment talking some about potential names to keep an eye on and what all's going on there and those kind of things. But first and foremost, it sounds like Willie Fritz might be about to get a big time piece in Connor Weigman. Now, I want to talk through this a little bit and talk about who Connor Weigman is and what potentially is happening here. So, since the end of last week, when Connor Weigman actually declared that he was going to enter the transfer portal, it has looked very clearly like he was, being tied to Houston. He is from Houston. He went to Bridgeland High School in Cyprus, was a 5-star quarterback in the class of 2022, was not just any 5-star, like the second-ranked overall quarterback in composite ranking, 5th player in Texas on composite ranking. Composite score is 98.99, and while that's like a lot of numerical rankings of recruits can be kind of weird and whatever, that would be, as a high school kid, the second highest ranked player to ever come to the University of Houston, just a little bit behind Ed Oliver. In the terms of all-time ranking of recruits in that composite area, talking about like DeMarco Murray, Calvin Ridley, Calvin Johnson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, like big time playmakers. In terms of quarterbacks, the closest quarterback in that area, he's actually ranked a little bit higher out of high school than Aaron Murray, who only threw for 3,000 yards every single season. He was a starter in the SEC, the first quarterback to have 4 different 3,000-yard seasons while he was at Georgia. Obviously, the ACL tear kind of changed a lot of Aaron Murray going forward. But Connor Weigman's a true dual-threat quarterback with the pedigree that is that of a big-time recruit, a high-level recruit for sure. Again, 5-star class 2022. If you're paying attention to Aggie football, if you get Aggie friends and family, first, I'm sorry, but second, it was a very famous class. It was like the last grandstand for Jimbo there, right? They're going to win with this class of 2022. It's going to be a big deal. They got like highest ranked class in America and all the NIL money, this and then it was a big, big deal there in Aggie land, and slowly those guys are all fading out and going elsewhere. Weigman being a big one for Houston. Now, again, being from the Houston area, I would point out he didn't go very far in going to A&M. His top 5 out of high school included Baylor and Texas as well. He was trying to stay close, and he still, to this point, if Houston was not in the Big 12 yet at that point, Houston had a very different coaching staff at that point, right? Weigman had offers from everyone in America, going into his whittling down, but he was focused on staying close to home if you followed his recruiting stuff along the way here. Houston being as close as you can get to home, again, from Cyprus. I think that is the reason he's not like nationally regarded as the top, like #1 guy who get it prospect. And a lot of people do have him as the #1 quarterback in the portal, is because of those injuries at A&M. While at A&M, he played just 15 total games across 3 years. For what it's worth, the team did go 10-5 in those starts, 5-5 in Power 4 play. Played obviously an SEC schedule. They played a Miami game and a Notre Dame game earlier this year. He lost the starting job while injured this year to Marcel Reed there at A&M. Different type of quarterback. At a high school, Connor Weigman did run a 4.49 and was called on some recruit sites a dual threat, some recruit sites a pro-style quarterback, to get the kind of picture of the athlete we're talking about here. As a sophomore in 2023, he was on track for a good season, good start of the year, had 8 touchdowns, 2 picks, 68.9% completion, which is really rolling for ultimately having a foot injury. And so got to see him a little bit this year before an AC joint injury led to missing the rest of the season, because while he was out with that injury, it was not a season ender, but he lost the starting job right at A&M. And so part of that was, I guess, Marcel Reed's a very different quarterback too, new coaching staff, yada, yada, right? But Weigman's on the move, and the ties to Houston have been noticeable. You've seen hints and nudges and things like that from players liking comments and tweets and the posts and those kinds of things. I think there has been definitely after Monday communication, obviously, but I think people are kind of thinking like this is a home run. He's from your backyard, et cetera, for Willie Fritz. And for what it's worth, Weigman seems to be a very family-oriented kid, wants to stay close to home, like we said. And I think that those all click. It's just not just me reporting, being hopeful. Sports Illustrated's A&M website put this out last Thursday. The Houston Chronicle reported that he was Houston's number one target, and they'd had communication today, Monday, recording this Monday night. This is a big deal with a lot of momentum and a lot of movement. I heard some background stuff along the way, and without giving away details or sources necessarily, I do feel confident saying that there has been a lot of communication, all above board, obviously, and all totally and only the kind of communication that would be legal. But a lot of people are insinuating that like Connor Weigman may want to be a Houston Cougar, may want to put Houston on his chest, may want to represent the city. I also think it's worth pointing out that Slade Nagel has a hire at the OC spot. You've seen what Slade Nagel has done with guys like Michael Pratt. Their games are not horribly dissimilar. The big knock on Weigman after his injuries has been things about his arm strength. He's still very accurate in the short yardage situation. The deal is really more about his arm strength, that when the ball goes more than 25, 30 yards downfield, he starts doing a lot of floating and drifting, ball staying in the air for a long time. So if his receivers aren't necessarily completely super deluxe wide open, you might have time for a defense to get underneath it or whatever. Whatever the case may be, he is, again, regarded by a lot of these recruit sites and a lot of transfer portal sites as the top quarterback presently in the transfer portal. And frankly, to have to imagine quarterbacks commit quickly. He's also been linked to Syracuse and Louisville. For what it's worth, on Monday midday, reports at Syracuse were that the Syracuse head coach had not talked to Willie. They're not talked to Connor, whereas Willie definitely had. Coaches were, once they're in the portal officially as of midnight Eastern, going into December 9th, coaches were calling them early in the morning, late at night, trying to say, hey, we're thinking about you. Love to talk to you more. Let me know when you can talk. Like, just leaving that kind of a message. Didn't even get that out of Syracuse, one of the other schools tied to him. I read that and wonder if that meant that he might have his mind fairly made up and is just kind of formally putting things together before committing. Ultimately, though, this is a big, big get. A guy that when he's been on the field, if he comes to Houston, when he's been on the field in the SEC, has been extremely successful, right? And while he may not run the 4.49 out of high school, he is a good athlete. He might not be Zion Chris. He might not be Austin Carlisle as far as running the football goes, but he's a good athlete. He has 2 years of eligibility left, which would be great for your bridge guy between now and when Carlisle's really at his best. Carlisle would then get to redshirt and take a freshman year where he is learning college football, learning the new offense, learning the U of H, etc., and then gets to hit the ground running as a sophomore. You also kind of do the same kind of a delay with teaching and working with Keisean Henderson on the backside of that as well, and really bring in those two big-time 2025 and 2026 high school quarterbacks slower, because you have a 2-year window here theoretically with Connor Weigman if he's the guy to come, right? And so this is a big, big deal, and I'm here to tell you that where there is smoke, there is usually fire, right? This is not like a guarantee necessarily. He has a lot of options on his plate, but it is a very, very real thing that could happen, right? This is not just people being fans and saying, bring Houston kids back to Houston. This is a kid that has, it seems like, demonstrated interest behind closed doors. And this is a connection that I think is very, very real. Connor Weigman to Houston's got a lot of momentum, and I feel like this could happen at some point this week. Now, you saw a lot of people, like the most you saw as far as commitments went on Monday when the portal opened was typically people doing things like saying, we have a really strong hunch that this guy is going to that school. And it was 100% guessed or whatever by the people that work the site. That's because they've got a hunch and an inkling, and they're just waiting for the ink to dry, the T's to get crossed, the I's to get dotted, whatever, right? Weigman might be at that point. He might not quite be at that point. I do think as a quarterback, we'll get into the next segment why. I do think the quarterbacks are gonna sign early in this window, especially a guy like Connor Weigman, because of the impact they could have on the rest of the class. And the rest of the class is going to be really important for Houston. It's not just do they or don't they get Connor Weigman. There's a lot of guys there. And so I want to talk some about what Weigman could bring with him, what could happen there, as well as other quarterback names if Weigman chooses to do something else, all happening in the transfer portal. But before we get too terribly far, I'll remind you about our buddies over at FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook, is right now you get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if your bet hits. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. And when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page that you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com. You start with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. That's FanDuel.com. Now place a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.